Welcome back to the Python tutorial series. I'm so glad you're here. This is the 24th video in the series, and today we will learn about classes and objects. We will first go over what a class is, then we will write methods and classes, which are sort of like functions. After that, we will go over how to import a class, and then go over inheritance. Finally, we will go over the advantages of object-oriented programming. The timestamps are in the description below, so let's get started. I created a file called classes.py, and in this we're going to make a class called student. So student will hold a lot of attributes of a lot of students. For example, a student's name, grade, and GPA could all be held in a class for a bunch of students. So instead of using a list for all the students, all the grades, all the GPAs, we can make a class instead. So then the first thing I need to do is to initialize the class. So I'm going to define it and then do underscore init initialize underscore, and then I'll put self. We'll always need self. Then I'll do name, grade, and GPA. So there are three parameters: the name, the grade, and GPA. Self is not a parameter since we always include it. Then I'll do self.name equals name, self.grade equals grade, and self.gpa equals GPA. So what exactly is self? So self, we're just going to replace it with student1, student2, etc. So student1.name, student1.grade, and student1.gpa. That's all self really means. So I'm going to create a variable called student1 and set that equal to the student class. Then it's three parameters: the name, the grade, and the GPA. So I'll do Eli, 12th grade, and let's make up a GPA of 4.32. Then I'll also create another student, put them in the student class. Let's say Emilio, who's in 11th grade, and let's make up a GPA of 3.96. So if we wanted to print the name of student 1, we could do print student1.name, and that will print Eli. If we wanted to print student 2's grade, we could print student2.grade. Now when we run this, we will get Eli because student1.name is Eli, and 11 because student2.grade is 11. So that's an overview of how classes work. If you're familiar with functions in a previous video, if you have not seen that already, feel free to click the link above. But if you're familiar with functions, we can put functions inside of classes, and when we do that, that's called a method. It's basically the same thing but inside a class. So I'm going to paste the code from before, then create a function, def, then create a method called honors, so def honors, and it has no parameters, so just self, because then it will take in self.name, self.grade, and self.gpa. We're going to see if a person has honors. So if self.gpa is greater than or equal to 4, we're going to return highest honors. Else if self.gpa is greater than or equal to 3.75, we're going to return high honors. Else if self.gpa is greater than or equal to 3.5, we're going to return honors. And then otherwise, we'll return nothing. So we'll just return none, which means nothing. I'll paste in the student1 and student2 from before. We can print student1.name like we previously did, but now we can also use this new method called honors. So I'm going to print student2.honors, and make sure to put in open and close parentheses because it is a method and we don't need to put anything inside it because it has no parameters. And I forgot to put a colon after the else if statement, so I'll do that now. So now when we run this, this should work. And let's see what happens. We get Eli because student1, that name is Eli. And we get high honors because student2.honors it's going to grab 3.96, which is greater than 3.75, so it returns high honors. So that's how methods with classes work. So I created a new file called importing classes. If you remember from a previous video, we can import libraries and methods from online such as math, random, and numpy. We can do the same thing by importing classes and even functions from our files. So I'm going to import the student class here. From classes with methods, import the student class. I'll create a student called student1 and set that equal to the student class and give it a name of Luke, give it a grade of 8, and let's just make up a GPA. Now I can print student1.honors like before, and when I run this I will get high honors because student1 has high honors. So this worked, so we successfully imported it. I created a new file called inheritance.py and I'm going to import the student class like before. I'll then create a new class called high school or college student and I'm going to inherit the student class. So what that means is it takes in all the attributes of the student class. Then I'm going to create a new method called year, and this will take in the high school or college student's year as a number and then come back with freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. For example, if it's 9, I'll return freshman, and 12, I'll return senior. So this method year doesn't take any parameters in, just self, and we also don't need to initialize it because it's already initialized from the student class. And then we'll create an if statement. If self.grade is equal to the double equal sign 9 or 13, we will then return freshman. Else if self.grade is equal to 10 or 14, we'll return sophomore. Else if self.grade is equal to 11 or 15, we'll return junior. Else if self.grade is equal to 12 or 16, we'll then return senior. And then otherwise it's invalid, so we'll just return false. I'm then gonna create a variable called student1 and set that equal to the high school or college student class. And then I'll create a name called Blake, and let's say he's in 12th grade and has a GPA of 4.12. I'll then print student1.year and put an open and close parentheses because it's a method, and then I'll run this and it should work. And it says he's a senior, and that is correct since he's in 12th grade. And if you remember from student, we had the honors method. We inherited that method, so we can run it here by printing student1.honors with an open and close parentheses. So now when we run this, it should work. And we get senior for his year, which is correct, and highest honors, since his GPA is greater than or equal to 4.0. So that's an overview of inheritance with classes. So now let's go over the benefits of object-oriented programming. So what exactly is object-oriented programming, or OOP for short? It's what we've been doing throughout this entire video. Before this, we've been using procedural programming, where we just write functions and variables. And if you have to use a function in another program, you have to copy it. And if you have to change it, you have to change it multiple times. But with object-oriented programming, you can group variables and functions into objects. That's called encapsulation. We did that through classes. Object-oriented programming also has abstraction. That makes things look simpler and reduces the impact of change, because they are all grouped under the same class. If we change to one method, everything that uses that method will also change. We don't have to change a lot of functions in different places to make sure everything works. We can just change to one method, then everything will still work. Another important thing that we went over was inheritance. In this video, we went over the type of student. A high school or college student has a year, and that inherited the student class. Object-oriented programming also has polymorphism. What that means is that different objects behave differently. For example, if we created another subclass called grade school student, that would behave differently than the high school or college student because they're unique. So encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism are the four main benefits of object-oriented programming. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to follow along with this video series by subscribing and hitting the notification bell, or by clicking on the next video so that you can expand your knowledge about Python. And as always, I can't wait to see you next time.